This is the Super League Timeout podcast with your hosts, Michael Hanson-Morris and Jess Smith.
Hello and welcome back to Timeout podcast, episode number 3. Michael Hanson-Morris, Jess Smith, and Jess. Opening weekend in the books, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah, so much action. We said it in the preview podcast last week. New season, new faces. We've got some returners as well. Plenty to talk about. So much action at the weekend, and it was so great to be up at Loughborough.
Indeed, and obviously shout out to Volleyball England as well for hosting. It was a great new setup, a lot of good feedback as well we had, and obviously we got to shout out JC and the team behind the stream on our end from the comms side. Really terrific job leveling up with the extra camera this year, the pre-game show hopefully as well. Those of you at home and those of you catching up with games when you weren't on court, enjoyed that, and we've definitely got more to come. We've got some new things up our sleeve for Super League Live as well, but just a great opening weekend and not without drama. We'll recap it all on today's episode as we try not to overreact while most definitely overreacting. So we're always going to start every episode now with the weekend wrap. That's where we're going to swing around the league, talk about everything going in as the least amount of time, but the most informative way possible. So, Jess, we're going to start with the Mari Women's Super League, the Sunday action. And our first game of the day, the reverse sweep, Durham Palatinate 3, Dark Star Derbyshire 2. Dark Star 2-0 up, and they definitely look like they're in cruise control.
Yeah, they did. Derby came out really strong on Sunday. Really wanted to put a stamp on things. On the other hand, Palatinates came out a little bit slow, similar to the way that the boys were on Saturday, starting off slow and then somehow in set number 3, just waking up and turning everything up to 11.
Indeed. Obviously, a big performance from Chloe Thomas, who's our one to watch. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but Durham coming back and in the end, relatively comfortable through the back end of the game. 25-15, fourth set, 15-10 in the tie break. But plenty to work on still from Durham. It's definitely not the most convincing start they could have had.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether or not that dropped point for them will make an impact when we get to the back half of the season.
Yeah, 28 points apiece for Chloe Thomas and Hajar Elawani in that one. And the next game from 1-5 set reverse sweep to another, the London Derby. We built it up last week and it definitely delivered. London Lionhearts jumped out to a 2-0 lead, come back in set number 1 and side out, rolling the dice. Big change by Mark Kontopoulos at the end of the second set, Jess, moving Alexis Diaz-Infante into the middle, and it paid off with that reverse sweep. And in the end, probably the better team won, but definitely some encouragement for Lionhearts from those opening 2 sets.
Yeah, I think the biggest change since last season is the fact that their passing is so much improved from what we saw last year. And, big shout out to DeToman, their libero, who was absolutely amazing on the day, picking up so many defensive touches, some really great service reception on the Lionheart side. But yeah, that big change on the Polonia side just kind of blew them out of the water in those last couple of sets.
I won't give away too much, but I did briefly see Mark on the way out of the arena as I was going in to do the pre-game for the next game that we'll talk about in a second. And I said, how much did you practice that with the rotation? He went once. So credit to Side Out for stepping up, making some. Also great to see Jana Palmova back in the lineup for Side Out. She made a big difference coming off the bench in a game that neither team could kill the ball efficiently. We'll talk about that shortly as well. And then just the last 2 games, fairly convincing. Mallory Eagles, the defending champions, coming out, putting out a absolute statement over the newly promoted Newcastle Knights. Mallory 25-16, 25-18, 25-9. They closed out Newcastle. And we said it on the day, on the call, that was almost pitch perfect by Mallory for opening day.
Yeah, an impressive performance for them, and to say that they've had quite a number of changes in their lineup, exactly the type of opener they would have wanted for the season if they want to set the tone that they're headed back in the same direction they were last year with all of their success.
And for Newcastle, we knew it would be a bit of a test opening day. Defending champions, a team they struggled with last year, obviously slightly different rosters, but I think definitely some learning curves. The serve reception unit's definitely something I think the Knights will be looking at moving forward.
Yeah, service reception, and I think as well some of their blocking was a bit late at times and just trying to close up that block. Obviously, Mallory's got a very fast offense, so it is difficult to keep up with, but they'll have to figure out a way to keep up with the pace across the rest of the Mari Women's Super League.
And then the final result, Essex Rebels 3-0 over Leeds Gorse. Probably the result we probably expected going in. Essex winning 25-10, 25-20, 25-13. But there was definitely some moments there, Jess, that Leeds looked like they were just starting to understand. They had some welcome to the Super League moments as well. A couple of very big swings crashing down on that lead side from Elena Dupre and others. But there was definitely some positives for the young team that if they can be consistent, they've got a chance to pick up some sets and maybe some wins.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, you can tell that these girls have played together quite a lot. I mean, obviously, they've been through this development program together, playing the under 16 and 18 Cup most of them last year at the end of the season. So, plenty of positives coming out of that group. They definitely have a few things they need to work on, but we know with a young squad with a focus on development that this might be the year that they do struggle, and they just take a lot of learnings from every match that they go to.
And one thing to watch, definitely the Essex bench were having some fun this weekend. Not quite picking up a yellow card, but they were definitely pushing it. But it's also great to see that energy, especially in that last slot of the weekend. A lot of waiting around with how many games went long.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we went well into the later hours of Sunday evening. So great to see the energy from the Essex players and the Essex bench in turn. And you alluded to the fact that they didn't get a card. They did get a couple of warnings from the first referee. So we'll see how that goes over the rest of the season.
Yeah, and on to the Dynamic Men's Super League. We'll start with the opening game since it's the same two teams. A convincing win for the Rebels men as well over the newcomers Leeds Gorse. 25-20, 25-17, 25-14. And really the big news out of the game, Jess, for me, the takeaway, Essex mixing up. Jacob Kern moving to the opposite position for opening day. Don't know if that was just a matchup or if that's something we're going to see regularly, but a big wild card that we did not expect to start Saturday morning.
Yeah, definitely not something that we expected. Although I do think in the preview pod, we briefly mentioned Jacob's passing his service reception from last season. So it's, that is one way to definitely take care of that problem is to move him out of the passing unit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And obviously, Essex, super clinical, just 5 attack errors in the opener. But also some encouragement for Leeds. They had some bright spells. Their passing unit was really solid. Passed over a 2-2 on Super League debut against one of the better serving sides last year in the Super League. So definitely encouragement there. But feels like Leeds may just be one short, Jess.
Yeah, they've got a little bit of lack of depth. I think that's going to impact them as the season wears on. But they played quite well as a cohesive unit. They really looked like a team out there. So plenty of positives to take away and plenty to build on.
And then our next game, a preview of last year's bronze medal match, the Mallory Eagles, Newcastle Knights. We know last year on opening weekend delivered. We were there till stupid o'clock in Kettering, and I think they tried to keep us there at stupid o'clock in Loughborough, even though it was only game 2. 5-set thriller. The Knights winning the first set 26-24. Mallory 25-15, set number 2. The Knights came back 25-13, but then Mallory found a way to close it out 25-17, 16-14. And Jess, that was a result all the way in the balance. But Mallory's experience just coming through at the end.
Yeah, and I mean, those set scores tell you that both teams are just struggling a little bit with consistency, and some of that will be that we're at the very beginning of the season, and we've got new players and things, come out a slightly different way because your opponents are different as well. So you might have made one game plan and it just didn't come off the way that you expected to. So I'm expecting better performances from both teams as we go on, but it was an exciting match to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the block that won it in one of the plays of the weekend. But I think the most encouraging thing for Newcastle said the women's struggle in the serve receive. Newcastle passed a 2-4-4 on the day. Every set except second set, they actually went over a 2-5. And Sam Shenton's decision to start Ollie Tuck in that second outside position paid off on that end. And there'll be plenty of encouragement for the Knights. But he said Nathan Fullerton doing it all for Mallows, who we'd expect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they need to figure out a way not to just rely on him, but as the season goes on if they can spread their offense a bit more. And obviously, that we're going to talk about some of the middles and what they have going on, but they just need to get that varied offense, get those middles running, and become slightly more efficient than they were in this opening match.
Definitely, and Newcastle won the third set through the middle with Christo Banchin, who obviously is a D3 national champion, so definitely something to build on for the Knights. But one team that's got a lot of building to do, the defending champions, going down 3-1 over Nottingham, 25-22 in sets 1, 2, and 3. The first two going to Nottingham, the third going to the Giants, but Nottingham closing it out convincingly, 25-17 for a 3-1 win. And Jess, this is one that very easy to overreact to. It's opening weekend, but convincingly the better team won. But hard to say how much of it was good volleyball by Nottingham and how much of it was errors by the Giants. London Giants ended up with 55 errors over the 4 sets.
Yeah, and I think that was more than 20 errors, more than what Nottingham did on the day. I think a key thing here is I'm actually going to say something that Neil said in the live stream at the time, which was, you know, Nottingham looked like a team on the court. London Giants looked like a group of 6 players stood next to each other on the court. And I think that's the difference maker. So you're right. This opening match is not going to be. This isn't going to be exactly how we see London Giants play through the season. It is the opening match. We're early on in the season. They're still trying to mesh together. They've got a lot of new signings. I think they've only got a couple of returners. So I think we'll see the team dynamic change quite significantly over the coming weeks.
And of course, plenty of encouragement for Nottingham as well, picking up the 3-1 win. Tough task next week. We'll touch upon that at the end of the episode. But set 4 against the defending champions, 24 attacks, 13 kills, just 1 error in set number 4. And they closed it out, a team full of confidence, despite losing a couple of big pieces from last year in Griffin Walters and Sam Peters.
Yeah, but they've got really good, solid passing. They were amazing in defense, and the new opposite Akani was quite impressive, especially in that last set. Came through with some really key momentum swinging kills.
And then the final game of the day, absolute thriller as the Durham Platinets look dead and buried once again, 2-0 down. Richmond firing balls left, right, centre, and all of a sudden Durham flipped a switch and found ways to come out 3-2 in the end. And it's hard to really put a finger on what changed because it felt like maybe a little bit fatigue from Richmond, Jess, but then Durham just found ways to get other people involved because set 1 and 2 just couldn't find the floor at all.
Yeah, they really struggled in those first couple sets. It was almost like they hadn't had enough time to warm up, which is a bit odd considering the match before theirs went an extra set. So in theory, they should have had extra time to warm up. So maybe they stopped to watch that last set and just let themselves get too cool ahead of the official warm up. But some really positive stuff in those last 3 sets. They definitely woke up. They started to play together more smoothly. They were a lot more clinical with where they were placing the ball in their attacks. And I think their blocking improved as well in those last few sets, which made a big difference.
Indeed, and Richmond struggled on serve down the stretch. In the last 3 sets, they won just 28 points on serve receive, 36 points allowed. So going negative on serve receive in sets 3, 4, and 5. Definitely something for to work on. But Artemi Sudakov, we talked about him in the pregame. We talked about him last week. We didn't quite know. We'd never seen him in action. But he was definitely one of the talking points coming out of the weekend. A huge first couple of sets.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He was massive in those first couple sets. There were some errors creeping in the last 3 sets. But again, you mentioned fatigue. I think that's a big part of it, especially when he is the key outlet player for them. So if they can get some depth or mix things up a little bit more so that they're not relying on him so early in the match, let him save some fuel in the tank for later on, that'll make a difference. But overall, considering that we didn't know a lot about the Richmond team heading into the opening weekend, I was quite impressed with their performance, despite the fact that they had that reverse sweep.
Yeah, and that was the weekend wrap. Everything that happened on opening weekend in Loughborough. And we're now going to move on to setting the stage, our second segment. Not going to be an every week segment, Jess, but when we've got 8 games, we've got plenty of things to look at, and we'll start with the block. We've already talked about it. Logan Clark 14-14, set number 5. And he came up with an absolute shutdown to give Mallory the momentum before they won the match.
You have the serve, you have the reception, so you guys have to win 2 in a row. That is an overpass. This is a good chance. Trulo, Bell, Martinez with the dig down the line. Logan Clark plays it over. Jefferson Williams got his hand in the head. The crowd ooh and ah. And Logan Clark with a monster.
Those of you just audio only, Logan Clark coming out of nowhere. It was a free ball given up by Mallory. Newcastle in control of the point, and out of nowhere, big left hand by Logan Clark. The ball coming basically straight down over the net tape. No cover in the world was getting to that. And the Mallory captain stepping up big when his team needed him because they were in trouble.
Yeah, and he did that last season as well, right? He stepped in a couple of key moments to either put a ball down or put some really key blocks in, and to see that come back this year is really encouraging for Eagles, and I think we'll see a lot of that, and hopefully they don't get themselves back into that sort of position, but really great block from him there.
Yeah, and that one is going to be up there for block of the season. And then a lot of other highlights, Jess, but we're going to flip all the way to the last game of the evening. Essex Rebels Leeds Gorse. And out of nowhere, set number 3, we had a absolute setting show. And we'll start with Lauren Thorne and one of the setter dumps of the season. And again, those of you audio only can see that Leeds bench react. Pete Makowski with the absolute stun reaction. Penny Spears as well on the Leeds bench. We'll see it again for those of you watching on the podcast. But Lauren Thorne coming right into the middle of the court and then understands the block is flowing her side and goes over the head, over the net, right in the sharp angle to position 4. And no one anywhere near it from the Rebels, and the 16-year-old showing what she's going to be capable of, Jess. Just the awareness and court sense. She also had a big set of dump in set number 2 as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the positional awareness is impressive, right? Because she's almost between positions 2 and 3 on the court, and she's pushing a back set ball so smoothly over to position 4. And it's, I don't know, a couple inches inside the line. It's pretty close, but it was just the smoothness of the entire thing. And I said to you after the match, I think that's going to be my personal setter dump of the season. And I would challenge anybody in the Super League to do something better than that, because that was so impressive.
Indeed, and we're not just talking on the Mari Women's Super League, Dynamic Men's Super League side as well. But over the other side of the net, McKenna Smith went, wow, I see that. I'm going to try and raise it. This one, not a setter dump, Jess. But when you talk about picture perfect pass, this might go in the dictionary. And the long rally going, and Leeds look like they're in control. This was one of the big rallies of the game, 6-4 in the set. And out of nowhere, McKenna Smith, the right-hand set on what looked to be an overpass, just absolutely perfect. You can see the Essex, even Alex Chinnery, hands on his head. That doesn't happen very often. The the Essex bench absolutely loving it. And I think the reverse angle as well doesn't quite show it on that angle, but how tight to the net she was. It was an absolute dream set.
Yeah, you can see in that replay the Leeds Gorse players are going up with her because she's front court at the time, I'm pretty sure. And it looked like it was definitely an overpass. And somehow she gets a single hand to that ball and pushes the most perfect shoot set straight out to position 4. Perfect pace, perfect height. Yeah, again, so impressive.
And they're just some of the excellent plays. Some of our plays of the week. We're going to throw them onto socials as well. Get your votes in. Let us know in the comments which one was your favourite. And the other thing before we move on, Jess, something that came out once we got some of the stats back from the weekend. There was a couple of big stats where I know me and you have been talking about them off air, but London Lionhearts versus Team Side Out. 219 digs.
Wow. I mean, it did feel like that match had a particularly high number of quite long rallies. I'm talking like 20, 30-second rallies, which in volleyball that's, pretty peak. I know that some of you that follow socials might have seen one in the Brazilian league this week that went in 1 minute and 37 seconds. But yes,
Huh? Send that to me, please.
yeah, will do. Yeah, so but yes, 20 and 30-second rallies. But when you have a high volume of those in a match, it and then that was a 5-set match as well. It just everything is so much longer, everything is so much more tiring. And I think that's where some of that bench depth comes into play.
Indeed, and there'll be some hitting concerns for both these teams, but defense on point off the bat. And now, Jess, we're going to move on to one of our storylines of the week, our Dig It Up section. And I'll tell you what, we were definitely digging 5-set comebacks. I know I've got some egg on my face for that one. I know that's going to come up. But 3 reverse sweeps in 3 straight games over the weekend. Teams looking dead and buried, fighting back, and a very intriguing platform set up because in most of those games, they weren't just edging sets by 1 or 2 points. They were blowout, convincing fashion. And then all of a sudden, momentum just turning in set 3 and then never getting it back. So what's your takeaway from the 3 reverse sweeps?
I think it's interesting actually that 2 of the reverse sweeps were both Durham Palatinates. So take that however you would like to take that. I'm sure somebody will come after me for saying that. But overall, I think it shows that teams are very aware of the new setup this season. There are fewer teams in the league, there's fewer games, there are fewer margins for error. So every single point, every set is going to count for something. So even though they've had reverse sweeps and they've dropped a point for some of them, they'll feel that they dropped a point. Getting 2 is going to be key.
Yeah, and 1 point may make the world a difference one way or the other. But I think that my takeaway when I really look at it back is how dramatically the teams that win control just went off the ball. Generally in set number 3 as well. You look at Dark Star in control between set 3 and set 3 and set 4 combined. They went from to 17 kills, 14 errors on 67 swings in set 3 and 4. Richmond, we've already talked about serve, receive points, 1 loss. They went sets 3 to 5, 26 kills, 26 errors on 81 swings.
Mhm.
So like just the absolute dramatic fall off of the offense. And yes, credit to defensive adjustments, blocking, things like that. But it was just like almost like fatigue hit in and then there was just no answer. And I think the question is, and you look at some of those teams, Richmond, Dark Star Women, you do wonder, are they lacking some depth and some ability on the bench to change things when things don't go their way this season?
Yeah, and I mean, even Lionhearts, so they did make a change, and it was quite effective. They had Iwane come in, who then had to leave the venue early, so wasn't available for the 5th set, which I think we saw the impact of that.
We will talk about that. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. But I do think the depth of squad and the ability to make adjustments when you need to, rather than only, you only have 1 or 2 options, is going to make a big difference for those teams in particular. And it just might put them at a disadvantage from the outset.
Yeah, and obviously when you look at the rate, we expect a lot of these games to go long. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, the transfer window is still open. Maybe some teams got some registration issues, and I know not everyone's ITCs came back for opening weekend across the league. So a couple of players out, but we talk about Durham in particular, Jess, and something we wanted to kind of talk about. We were talking about it off air on Sunday, but it affect more the women, but also the men. Is obviously Durham were moving around a little bit on serve, and we were wondering, did it actually affect the block? It definitely felt like on the women's side, we thought the establishment of the block for Durham women in particular would be a strong point. Obviously, Durham men leading the league with 17 blocks. No such issues on that side. But it felt like Dark Star had the better blocking unit in that game in particular on Sunday. And we wondered if not being set on the serve will actually maybe disadvantage Durham in the long term. And maybe actually that's more reason to pick up and get the changes earlier.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's part of why the rule change was implemented this season about being able to, you don't have a rotational fault on the serving side, is so that a serving team isn't at a disadvantage because they're trying to swap positions. So completely agree with you. I think that has it, especially in the first 2 sets, it put Durham at a disadvantage because instead of being set and ready and watching the ball, they're still moving to their positions and then having to react to where the ball is going from there. So they've got, double the length of court to travel. to get in place. And we saw several times when the middle just didn't make it all the way out to the pin to close the block up and gave Darkstar every advantage just from an attacking perspective.
And we obviously on the men's side, we knew Durham's men block was going to be a issue for every team in the Super League. It's something teams are gonna have to figure out. Obviously, no Sean McQuiggan. Chatting with Ross Enfield, probably about another month, we'll see. Durham have got a big gap in the Super League schedule, so probably the right time for an injury. But you talked about Awan and the Lionhearts. That's probably the backstory of this weekend. I was having listened to the coin toss to set 4 and giving you guys up in the broadcast booth an idea of what was going to go on. I'm walking out the arena. Next thing I see is Deanna Awan with her suitcase leaving the gym. And I was immediately like, luckily I got to speak to her and she had a train to catch. I don't know if it was a work reason or if it was just poor planning, but she was the better of the two opposites for Lionhearts. Elena Vislian really struggled on Sunday. So, yeah, we'll get to the backstory of that sometime, I'm sure. I'll be honest, I haven't asked the question yet. I probably will. I probably should have. But yeah, that miss, definitely a miss down the stretch. But again, Lionheart's just so heavily reliant on Masha Troubadour. 71 swings she had on Sunday. And for Lionhearts, we talked about the departure of a couple of key players. Obviously, no libero change in Madoka Weldon, as much as Camilla de Homan, she said, played really well with Weldon out. But how frustrating is that as a coach? Going to a fifth set, vital point on the line, and your opposite has to leave the gym.
Yeah, that has to be one of the most frustrating things to have happened, because Iwane came in midway through set number 1 and made an immediate impact and changed the whole of the match, not just that one set. So for then to not have her into the deciding set when you're already in a race, and it might have been, new news to Vislian as well. So suddenly she's like, okay, I'm having to go back in his opposite. I know I struggled in the first set. Mentally, that's really tough as a player. So I can't even imagine just how frustrating it would have been on the day in the middle of that situation. But I felt like I had to say it on the podcast because I think on the stream I might have said that she was potentially injured because she went running off the court and picked up like an ankle brace. And I was like, oh no, she's got an injury or something. And then we heard she wasn't coming back, and I was like, okay, well, we'll have to find out more about that. Luckily, it was nothing so serious.
No, the one injury that we know of over the weekend, Dylan Cohen ended up in A&E with a thumb injury. We speculated what it was at the time. I haven't heard anything following that, but I know he was going to go get it x-rayed. We hope the Mallory middle is okay. So our next segment, Jess, having moved on, our big swing. And I suppose we've had to start with my swing and miss. That bold prediction lasted all of 2 games.
Yes. And I wasn't actually going to give you any stick tonight because I gave you a lot of stick live on the day, which I would love to say I feel bad about, but genuinely I don't, because it was hilarious. So, and it's not fun if we can't poke fun at each other, because I'm sure that my predictions are probably out the window as well. But now that there's been 2 reverse sweeps already in the Mari Women's Super League, what is your new bold prediction for the season?
Ooh, I actually haven't thought of one. That's a very good question.
To be fair to you, though, while you're thinking, it's not often that you get things like so wrong. You're usually, because you have really good knowledge of the players and the skills, and you spend a lot of time talking to both the coaches and the players. So it's not often that you're going to get something this wrong. I say, as you're about to give us a new one of these, maybe we'll just be cursed this season.
I'm going to go in a very different direction with this.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Hajar Elawani leading the Super League in kills this season.
Okay. I could see that. She put out a really good performance this weekend.
She was very good. She also, I believe, got the first yellow card from a player in the Super League this season on either side. Picking that one up in, I think it was set 4. But no, when I kind of look at that, I think obviously the Masha's always a name up there. We know Elena Dupre is going to have a huge season. Chloe Allen always up there. But I just think with Alice Brand, obviously, I think Lindsay, sorry, not the Lindsay Legg. I've forgotten the name of the Dark Star opposite, and that's going to really annoy me. So I'm going to apologize in advance for that one. I will think about it. But I think they've got a few more hitting options this year, but I still just think there's something in Hajar's game where I think she's just starting to develop not just the power swing. And I think that evolution we saw in set 1, set 2, and some of the kills late in the game, that she's starting to read blocks a little bit more, go to a few more tips and rolls and find different ways to hit the floor. So it may not be outlandishly bold, but I still don't think it would be someone that you'd naturally put in your top 3.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And I completely agree with you. It's something really great to see as a player develop slightly more, as they do tend to add more shots into their arsenal. So be great to see how she does this season and find out at the end of the year whether or not you're right. And they will get better, but they're not going to be, suddenly in the top 4. They're not going to make Final Four this season. I don't feel like that's a bold prediction. That's just a almost statement of fact. However, Newcastle was a bit of a shocker, and I do expect them to turn things around from the way that they were this weekend. But the performances that we saw from Mallory and Rebels were that good, that solid all the way through, that I think the other teams are going to struggle to keep up with that. The other 2 matches went to 5 sets, and the level was really high, but was it as high as what those two teams were putting out there?
I'm going to say let's wait a week, because we've got one game next week. We're going to talk about it in a few minutes' time. But Side Out is definitely someone we've got an eye on. Obviously, Durham's slow start as well. I definitely think they can mix it up. I agree that through opening weekend, but potentially did we see 1-8-2-7 as matchups? Maybe. We don't know. There's a lot of volleyball to be played.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw holes in both Mallory and Essex's game. And I think that's the thing. As much as we said Mallory were convincing, you were next to me at the end of the first set, and we were like, Mallory only won that to 16. It felt like it should have been 25-10.
Yeah.
In second set, they had a big wobble. Essex second set didn't look super clean. They had some big mistakes I wouldn't expect on serve receive, leaving some balls down seams. So there's holes in both teams' games. I'm probably more convinced through week 1 about Essex, because I think McKenna Smith's probably the one that I didn't know enough about, but I think she could well be the best setter in the Super League. Obviously, we've already seen that one-handed climb, but just to control her range, I think is going to be a big addition. Obviously, we don't know where Mallory going to look long-term setting. Gabby Nobrega had a great game. But I will say for Mallory, and it's probably the surprise performance of the weekend, how well Claire Kellam played as an actual opposite. We saw the advancement Selena Batiste made last year for Mallory, and she kind of kept Kellam out the game. Kellam was a serving sub realistically down the stretch, but Kellam had 10 kills, 3 aces. We know she's a good server, 1 block, only 2 errors, and it felt like 10 kills wasn't quite reflective. It felt like she was everywhere. She had one of the swings of the weekend down the line on effectively what you'd call a slide. She was in that 1-2 gap, and she went all the way out to the pin and just nailed one down the line. And I think the question going in was, how does Chloe Allen get support this year? And if Kellam can do that consistently, that's a big positive for Mallory.
Yeah, it is. And I think because she's also a setter, like in the times when she was called to assist rather than to attack, she put up some really amazing bowls. And it was just that all-around performance that made such a difference for the Mallory team. I do agree with you, though. Complete surprise. I wasn't expecting it, but she came out with the fire, and she was so aggressive throughout. Every ball she touched, she made it better. She made it stronger. She was looking to, put a hole in the floor effectively.
Yeah, and it's the one game we don't have full stats from, so we don't quite know how efficient she was, but it was definitely a strong start. But I think Durham may have something to answer for. Side Out is intriguing just because of the depth and versatility, but we get that big matchup on Saturday. I know we're looking forward to that one. But before we look at that, we've seen the highs. Now we need to talk about some of the lows, and that is our dive bomb segment. And Jess, we saw some great volleyball, but wow, we also saw some clips that no one's going to want to see back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'd be interested if people would maybe send one of the two of us some that, did we miss something that was really egregious? Why not?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to call myself. I made some absolute. There's twice I called points going to one team and they were down the other end. I can't remember which games they were. That does happen over 6 games of broadcasting. I'll give myself a bit of a break on that one. But yes, I definitely did spend the entire first set calling the Durham Libero by the wrong name. Apologies, Albert, once again for that one, because there was a late change in the team list and I hadn't updated the notes accordingly. But let's start with the University of Nottingham London Giants game. And Jess, a point that
Down the
London
line,
Giants
well
might not want
dealt
to see
with
back.
by Jack Kane, 101, dug up by point. High ball. That might just be the blooper of the weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the sharpest cut shot ever hit on a Volleyball England stage. Let's watch this again. It may or may not have been on his own side, but you cannot replicate that angle. Just imagine if his hand was over the net and it was onto the other side of the court.
I love
Neil
Neil's
Ray.
commentary on that.
Neil got that spot on. Daniil Povrenko didn't have a bad game. The young Ukrainian opposite for London Giants, but that was getting things wrong of the highest degree. And I don't know if there's a fine system for hitting under the net, but if there is, that's going to be a costly error.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was just so much fun. Oh, goodness. Sorry, I'm still laughing about Neil's commentary.
And apologies for bringing that up if you're watching anyone from London Giants. Other one, we'll flip over to the Women's Super League. And maybe something the Dark Star defense in this reverse sweep doesn't want to see again. Yes. This was when Dark Star was 17-16 up in set 2. Maybe a chance to close it out. And the ball comes out down the line. And JC Need, the Canadian, maybe watching too much NHL, gets absolutely 5-holed on the down the line attack by Chloe Thomas. Straight through the legs.
I mean, there is a volleyball drill where you try and get people to stand in a position so that the ball would fall between their legs. It's something that you tend to do with the juniors. So, I mean, spot on. Excellent drill. Really great use of the legs. Love it.
But maybe not in the Mari Women's Super League 17-16 up, trying to close out the former league champions of 2 years ago, Durham. And last up, I don't know if this is a highlight. I don't know if it's a blooper, Jess, but we've got to talk about it. Let's have a look when you get your words mixed up.
Diaz Infante up to score. Wow, that's good. Yeah.
I mean, foreshadowing?
To serve. Hey!
Foreshadowing.
Yes.
100% foreshadowing. That's all Jess Smith right there. Diaz
just knew it
Infante
was
better
coming.
credit you with that point.
Well, I suppose if you're a side-out fan, that worked.
I mean, yes. What's the opposite of the commentator's curse? Is like the commentator's blessing, because somehow I blessed that one serve. Total mix up. I mean, we mess up a lot in the booth. I'm not gonna lie. I know that I mess up all the time. I probably get people's names wrong, or say something silly that doesn't make any sense to anybody. But at least that was a funny one, so we'll take it.
Always moving on, and again, we like to have a laugh in the commentary. And actually, while we're here, shout out to everyone that joined us in the booth this weekend. Warren making his debut with me on Sunday night. Obviously, great to have Neil with us. Dennis Shop back on the team as well, and Oliver as well, who I got to work with on Sunday afternoon. So thank you to you guys helping us out this weekend. I know we're going to have a few guest commentators throughout the season. It'd be great to have all of you with us. But yes, that was the week in the Super League. But before we leave, let's look ahead. And the University of Nottingham, we talked about it. Big win to start the season. Well, how do you want to back it up? How about a trip to London and the Southeast to take on Mallory and Essex on a back-to-back?
Yeah, I mean, it's a busy weekend for the University of Nottingham. So Mallory one day, Essex the next day. That is, at least they're going all the way south first and then making their way back up on the Sunday, headed back home. But yeah, plenty to draw from. They've got a big squad, so hopefully that does them well on the the doubleheader this weekend. But I'm really interested to see the results of these matches after the performance that Nottingham put in on Saturday.
Yeah, I think so. And I was having a chat with a couple of people last night, and I was like, I generally could see any result for either of both those games. I could see a 3-point win for either team. I could see a 5-setter. Like, in theory, coming out of opening weekend, they're probably the three top teams in the league again. Overreaction. It's week 1. A lot's going to change. A lot of teams are going to get better. A lot of teams are going to have injuries or things, or new signings. But yeah, on paper, we know Nottingham always play Mallory well. So that will be very interesting. Nottingham, in fact, winning in Cobham last year. And that game on Saturday, 12:15 at Ernest Bevan, and then 3 o'clock for the Rebels men home opener on Sunday. So how many points are Nottingham going to walk away with, Jess Smith?
Oh, that's really tough to say because it could be none. It could be 4. I'm going to go with 4 as my estimate.
So that means either 2 tie-break victories or a 3-0-3-1 win and a 3-2 loss. Interesting.
Yep. I'm going to go with that. Feels safe.
And of course, the other 2 games, the other one in the men's side, a very interesting one, a London derby, 2:45 on Saturday afternoon. Richmond Docklands, London Giants. Jess, 2 teams trying to bounce back. You'd say Richmond probably looked better of the 2 sides on opening weekend. What's your thoughts going into this very interesting game? Because some team may hit the panic button on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah, potentially. I mean, I'd love to say that this is my game that I really want to watch this weekend, but to be honest with you, all of them sound really interesting. I want to watch every single one of them. Now, 2 of these games are at about the same time, so that doesn't help. But as far as Richmond versus London Giants, I think this is where it comes down to the squad depth issues that Richmond have versus the lack of team cohesion that Giants have. Now, depth, stamina, physicality, if Richmond have it, that's slightly easier to overcome in a short space of time than trying to get your team to suddenly play together 7 days after they didn't play as a team. So it's a big, big jump in the league here. So that one could really go either way. It's a tough one to call. I could see that one being a 5-setter quite easily.
Yeah, I think the worry is probably Giants have a little bit more on the bench off memory. I think they played 12 or 13 players on Saturday and that lost to Nottingham. But as you said, their synergy didn't quite look right. It'd be interesting to see what Mihalstov can cook up against Artemi Soldakov. That's going to be a very interesting matchup. Obviously, Giants have got some size in the blocking unit as well. Didn't necessarily have the best blocking weekend, though. London Giants, just 6 blocks. Third lowest in Super League. Only Richmond actually only having 5 themselves. But Richmond side out definitely needing some work. Just side out at 53% in the end on Saturday. So a big week for Richmond because we know that race for the bottom 2 spots is going to be really fierce on the men's side. And then we briefly alluded to it, Jess. 1 game in the Mari Women's Super League. And this one has everything you want in terms of spice. Mallory Eagles, team side out Bologna. Bologna, the only team that beat Mallory last season. That was a 3-0 in January. We didn't see side out start well, but they made that adjustment. We probably think Mark will go back to it. What do you think him and Bin and Sam Sorsky are cooking up this week to try and put a dent in Mallory's title hopes?
I'm sure that they're going to go out. They're going to set out a game plan to go up against Mallory because they know what Mallory can do now. They've seen, the new setup, and they'll probably be assuming that Mallory will play largely the same lineup that they did here in opening weekend. Again, this game could kind of go either way because if Side Out come out starting with fire, the way that they kind of finished out the match on Sunday, or if Mallory come out and play as clean as they did for most of the match on Sunday. Both teams have a lot of strengths. They've got some weaknesses. Both of them do. but it's a question of who's going to get the middles in flow, who's going to be able to get a block up and at least get containing block touches on most attacks, if not everything. Even if they don't get full-on stuff blocks every single time, those containing block touches are so key. And then as things go on, both of these teams have fairly good depth across their bench. If it goes the distance to 5, whose changes are going to be more effective?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some questions on the side outside. Does Mark know his best 7? What does it look like? Obviously, Merv Aiken didn't have the best setting performance on Sundays, and they obviously made that change, and that was quite effective. So do they go with that? Do they put Casey Bell back in the middle and let Lex on the opposite? Do they move Alex to a full-time middle? And that allows the extra hitter with Palm over or someone coming in. I think it's very interesting. And obviously, you said the depth normally favors Mallory, but I think the one thing that I think the reason Mallory will probably come out of top this stage of the season is we didn't see that consistent put away from side out, and they're arguably going against the best defensive unit on that back end in the league in Mallory. There were so many containing touches by the Eagles against Newcastle. Ari Sierra's doing her thing on the back end, but we saw even when Nebrega was relied on for defense, she was able to put the ball up and let Kellum get to it to set and keep Mallory in some sort of system. Maybe not the perfect system, but we know Mallory, the 2-setter system, have really found some ways to get offense through. So that's my concern for side out is, have they got that consistent power to put the ball on the floor? Because that's what you're going to need to beat this Mallory team.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair call out because Polonia gave quite a number of free balls at the weekend, and Mallory going to take advantage of that. It's not going to be like Lionhearts where they can still maybe contain what's coming at them. It's going to be every option, and as fast as the offense can run, that's how they're going to go.
Yeah, 29 free ball side out put over to the Lionhearts side on Sunday, and it'll be super interesting. But again, with these two teams, if side out walk out 3-0, you won't find me shocked on the episode next week.
Yeah.
So that is about it for Timeout episode 3. A big weekend gone, another intriguing one coming. Make sure to follow all the socials. VE Super League is where everything will be. JC, Matt, Millie and the team already putting out content behind the scenes. I've already seen a couple of reels from the weekend. There's definitely more coming. Some of the podcast clips come out as well. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on the VE YouTube channel if that's where you're listening. Also, give us a like and review on Spotify, especially on the YouTube. Get in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. Where are we wrong? Where are we right? We want to have that interaction with you as the season goes on. Don't be afraid to call us out if you think we're talking rubbish. We'll definitely address them next week. And of course, any game on the VE Super League this year will be streamed. So head to the VE website, go to the fixtures tab, and all the links for the live streams will be up. The Richmond Giants game stream is already up on the page, and once Mallory and Essex get them in, they'll be up as well. And Jess, last comments from you going into a very intriguing week number 2.
I'm really excited to see what happens this weekend because opening weekend sets the stage for the season, but now that all of the opening weekend nerves are out of the way, teams are starting to see what they perform like on an actual court in the middle of a match. Now we'll start to see some adjustments, some changes, and you'll start to see 1 or 2 players really stand out. We saw it this weekend, so who's it going to be next weekend coming up?
We'll find out. And I also believe we're going to have our first guest of the year next week. So join us next week. But from Jess Smith, myself, Mike Hanson-Morris, thank you very much. And we'll see you next Wednesday.
You've been listening to the Super League Timeout podcast, hosted by Michael Hanson-Morris and Jess Smith.